The courtroom was silent as a tomb. No whisper, no cough, no shuffling of feet. It was the kind of silence that made your flesh creep, the kind that hollered louder than any words ever could. The only noise was the slow, steady tick of the old clock mounted above the bench of the judge. Tick, tick, tick. Every second dragged on longer than the last, as if time itself did not wish to progress. In the middle of the room, Kody Brown sat at the defense table. For years, Kody had been in charge, the one manipulating all the strings. He had always been the charming patriarch, the king of his well-constructed public persona. Whenever a scandal loomed over his family, he knew precisely what to say to the cameras, precisely how to spin the story around, to present himself as the victim. But today was different. Today, there were no cameras he could manage, no rehearsed interviews, no calculated words. Today, the truth was no longer in his hands to manipulate. His once noble posture was gone. His face, usually bright with arrogance, was pale and pinched. His mouth clamped hard together in a hard, nervous line. His hands shook a little as he grasped the edge of the table, his knuckles hard from the strain of remaining calm. The sheen of sweat on his forehead gave away the tempest brewing within him. For the first time ever, Kody Brown seemed small. The trial was not merely about justice. No, much larger, much more sinister. This was about truth, about deception, about the type of secrets which can destroy not only a family, but an entire dynasty based on deceit. The stakes were not merely high, they were combustible. The tension mounts. Robyn Brown, Kody's remaining wife, sat on one side of the room. She was slumped in the front row, holding a crumpled tissue in her hands so tightly that it seemed on the verge of tearing in two. Her usually immaculate hair was disheveled and untidy, strands tumbling into her face, streaked with tears. Her frame racked with muffled sobs as she rocked back and forth, muttering something to herself, perhaps a prayer, perhaps an appeal. Alongside her were two of her children, their broad, wide eyes sweeping the room, as if attempting to comprehend why their world had collapsed at once. Robyn attempted to reach out to them every few seconds, her shaking hands grasping for solace. But the kids didn't move, stuck in shock. On the other side of the aisle, the other three women, Christine, Janelle, and Meri, sat together for the first time in what had felt like an eternity. They had once been sister wives. They had once celebrated holidays, laughter, and the aspiration of a cohesive family. Now, they sat together, not because of love or allegiance, but because of mutual suffering. Their faces were masks of sorrow and rage, each of them creased by deep furrows etched into their skin by years of betrayal. Christine sat rigidly, chin lifted in silent rebellion, though tears she would not let fall sparkled in her eyes. Next to her, Janelle's fists were clenched tightly in her lap, her face impassive, though her foot beat out an agitated rhythm against the cold marble floor. And Meri sat rigidly, her shoulders braced, her eyes staring straight ahead, as if to gaze elsewhere would break her fragile calm. The three women didn't exchange a word. They didn't have to. Their silence was telling, whispers of the past while they sat waiting for the judge. There was a buzzing of whispers in the air. Reporters filled the back rows, their notebooks and equipment at the ready to document every explosive moment. Family fans, former neighbors, and even distant relatives had packed in, eager to see the fall of a man who had once appeared invincible. Others whispered of Garrison's death, their voices shaking with sorrow and speculation. Others whispered of Kody and Robyn's failed marriage, speculating how it could have gone so very wrong. Each whisper contributed to the choking tension, a dense mist of gossip and partial truths drifting around the room. But the three women remained silent. They did not contribute to the whispers. They merely waited, their faces firm in determination, waiting for the time when their own voices would be heard. Kody, though, picked up every murmur as a knife to the heart. Every word was like a slice off another piece of the carefully built life he had created for himself. He gritted his teeth, mentally promising himself that whatever the day brought, he would not let them have their way. The judge arrives abruptly. The massive wooden door at the rear of the room opened with a deafening creak. All murmurs ceased in an instant. A bailiff entered first, his deep voice echoing through the strained quiet. All rise for the Honorable Judge Hayes. Everyone stood. The atmosphere was charged, electric with the heaviness of what was to come. Judge Hayes walked in, a hard man with deep creases on his face from years on the bench. His very presence seemed to command respect and fear. His gaze scanned the room, skipping over Kody momentarily before falling on the three women across from him. No one drew breath for a second. Judge Hayes sat down, fussed with his glasses, and grasped his gavel. Wood on wood rang out like a gunshot. Bang, court is now in session, he stated with authority. The words cracked through the air like a whip, shaking everyone to attention. Kody winced at the sound, his fingers digging harder into the table. Robyn whispered a soft, shattered sob. Christine, Janelle, and Meri drew straighter, preparing for what was about to be revealed. This wasn't a typical day in court. This was the day everything changed. The stakes are laid bare. The prosecution stood first, their lead counsel stepping forward into the center of the room with measured deliberation. Your Honor, he started. Today we gather not only to pursue justice for the loss that befell this family, but to discover the truth about years of manipulation, neglect, and abuse of authority. He shifted slightly, pointing toward Kody. Seated at that table is not the loving husband and father he claims to be. He is a man who employed control and fear to bend his family to his will, until the day his actions precipitated a terrible loss. Gasps spread through the courtroom. Robyn's wails increased. Kody sat stone-faced, his face ablaze with barely contained fury. The lawyer went on, his voice building with every statement. And by the end of this trial, we will establish beyond a shadow of a doubt that Kody Brown's decisions, his affirmative inaction, resulted in a young man's death. Christine's fists tightened. Janelle's eyes overflowed with tears, she hastily blinked back. Even Meri's stern demeanor wavered, her lips quivering. The lawyer stepped back, allowing the gravity of his words to hang in the air like a thick blanket. The battle begins. Then it was the defense's turn. Kody's attorney, a cold, calculating man in an expensive suit, made his way into the middle of the room with an aura of condescension. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he started smoothly. What you just heard was a tale. Nothing more, nothing less. He walked slowly, intentionally, locking eyes with each of the jurors. A tale related by bitter ex-wives with an agenda, wanting to ruin the reputation of a man who has done nothing but seek to keep his family together. He waited, allowing the words to penetrate. By the end of this trial, you will realize that Kody Brown is not a villain but a victim. Kody nodded marginally, his chest expanding as if he thought so, or needed to so desperately. But on the other side of the aisle, Christine's face set in a grim line. She knew what really was. They all did. This wasn't about revenge or bitterness. It was about finally revealing the man behind the mask, and holding him accountable for what he'd done. The first strike. Judge Hayes leaned forward, his gaze keen. Prosecution, you may call your first witness. The room was holding its collective breath. Christine rose slowly, her heart thudding against her chest. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. The moment Kody's carefully built empire would start to unravel. As she made her way towards the witness stand, Kody's eyes locked on hers for the first time that morning. There was no love there, no warmth there, only cold hatred and fear. Christine raised her chin, not backing down. The bailiff administered her oath, and as she settled into her seat, the weight of the past bore down on all of them. The war for truth had begun, and nothing, no one, not even Kody Brown, could prevent what came next. The atmosphere in the courtroom was thicker now, heavy with the weight of unsaid words. Every eye was on Christine as she approached the witness stand, her pace slow, deliberate, ritualistic. Christine Brown had been the family's warm, nurturing heart for years, the peacemaker, the glue who attempted to keep everyone together while Kody pursued his own goals. Today, though, she wasn't here to mend fences. She was here today to rip the wounds open and allow the truth to flow out for all the world to witness. The moment of truth. The voice of the bailiff thundered through the courtroom. Raise your right hand. Christine's hand shook a little as she raised it, but her eyes were firm. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Not I, Christine said resolutely, her voice clear in spite of the tension. She sat down, her eyes flashing briefly at Kody. His gaze shifted away immediately, as if a man desperate to shun the mirror reflecting his real self. The chief prosecutor moved to the front of the room. Mrs. Brown, he started kindly, describe to the court in your own terms why you decided to come forward today. Christine drew a deep breath, her chest lifting as if she was attempting to suck strength from each inhale. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled, not with fear, but with a deluge of feelings struggling to break free. For so long, she started. I was quiet. I told myself it wasn't my right to speak, that staying quiet was more vital than speaking the truth. Her eyes welled up, but she did not cry. Each time Kody hurt us, emotionally, mentally, sometimes even spiritually, I remained silent. I believed perhaps if I held the family together, things would improve. She hesitated, her hands grasping the railing of the witness stand. But things never improved. Things only deteriorated. Years of manipulation. Christine addressed the jury directly. Everyone watched us on TV and saw what Kody wanted them to see. A happy, close family. But behind our own doors, he dictated every single thing we did. The jurors shifted uneasily, their faces becoming darker. He controlled where we lived, what we said, even what we believed in. And if someone challenged him, Christine's voice dropped to a whisper. He'd turn the others against them. The prosecutor nodded for her to go on. Can you provide an example of this behavior to the court? Christine gulped hard. Yes. There was one instance when Meri attempted to inform Kody that she was not content. Rather than hear it, he turned to Janelle and me, and manipulated Meri's words in such a way that they appeared to her that she wanted to leave the family altogether. He did this repeatedly, separating us from each other, so that we could not gang up on him. Meri sat in the crowd, her eyes welling with tears while Christine spoke. She nodded tightly, verifying each word. Christine's voice grew stiff. This was not love. This was not marriage. This was control. And Kody was the man holding the chains. The night Garrison reached out, the tone of the prosecutor changed, becoming more serious. Mrs. Brown, we have to discuss Garrison. Just saying the name of her son shattered Christine's facade. Her shoulders quivered, her lips chattered, and for the first time ever, a lone tear rolled down her face. The whole room leaned forward, the air so charged with tension it was almost unbearable. Take your time, whispered the prosecutor. Christine nodded, composing herself. When Garrison died, she started, her voice cracking. The world viewed it as a tragedy. A young man cut down too soon. But what everybody doesn't know is that he called for help that same night. Robyn strangled a sob, covering her face with her hands. Kody clenched his jaw, his breathing harsh. Christine went on, her voice growing stronger. He called me first. He sounded so broken. He said he felt abandoned, like he didn't fit in this family anymore. She gripped her fists, rage combining with sorrow. I told him I loved him. I told him to hold on, that we'd make it work. But then he said something that froze me to the bone. The room fell utterly silent. Christine's gaze fell on Kody. He said, Mom, I tried calling Dad, but he won't answer. He once explained to me that if I ever crossed him, he'd act like I wasn't there. Gasps coursed through the courtroom like a tide. Christine's voice rose, shaking with anger. My son pleaded for his father's affection, his father's love, and Kody turned his back on him. The confrontation, Kody couldn't remain quiet any longer. He leaped to his feet, his face flushing with anger. That's a lie, he shouted, banging his fists on the table. I loved my son. I did everything to help him. Christine glared at him, her voice slicing through his tirade like a knife. You haven't returned his call, Kody. You didn't come when he needed you most. You were so busy defending your own reputation and Robyn's ego that you didn't even care about others. Robyn wept wildly, her head shaking. No, that's not true, she mouthed. But her words were overwhelmed by the din. The judge slammed his gavel down again and again. Order in the court. Gradually the commotion ceased, though the fury in the room still smoldered like embers barely suppressed. Kody breathed heavily back into his chair, his chest glistening, his skin wet with sweat. Christine's final words. Christine's voice sank to a low, shaky whisper, the sort that makes everyone gather in close and listen. If Kody had just picked up the phone, if he had just let Garrison know he was important, my son would be alive today. The words land like a sledgehammer. Even the grimmest jurors winced. Robyn emitted a blood-curdling shriek and fell into her chair, shaking uncontrollably. Meri and Janelle clung to each other, weeping openly. Christine gazed before her, her face smudged with tears, but her voice firm now. "This isn't about Garrison," she said. "This is about years of abandonment, manipulation and brutality. This is about a man who dismantled his own family, fragment by fragment, until nothing remained but shattered hearts and graves." The prosecutor nodded slightly, his expression serious. "No further questions, Your Honor." The silence after the storm. The courtroom was completely silent. No one said anything. No one budged. Kody remained immobile, his fists clenching the table so hard his knuckles turned white. There was no defense, for the first time in his eyes. Only fear, guilt, and the encroaching sense that his lies were falling apart. Christine walked down from the stand, head held high with the tears on her cheeks. She didn't look at Kody, as she walked by him once. To her he wasn't a father anymore, not a husband either. He was simply the man who had let them all down. When she sat next to Janelle and Meri, the two women along with Janelle held hands. They were together for one fleeting instant, not as sister wives, but as survivors. Judge Hayes cleared his throat, dispelling the quiet. "The court will recess briefly," he said. "We reconvene in 15 minutes. Bang. The gavel came down. As people rose to their feet, whispers spread like fire, reporters rushing to get every sentence of Christine's testimony on tape. But in the midst of the fray, one thing stood agonizingly clear. Christine's testimony had altered everything, and when the court came back, the true war had only just begun. The courtroom was still abuzz when the recess concluded. Newspapermen whispered in desperation, scratching out notes in notebooks. As cameras snapped in furious bursts, everyone knew Christine's testimony had opened the case wide. But there was a more and more disturbing feeling that even darker secrets were to be revealed. When Judge Hayes came back, and the gavel banged once more, silence descended like a heavy curtain. Bang. "Court is back in session," said the judge. "Prosecution, you may call your next witness." The prosecutor rose, his voice calm and measured. "The state calls Janelle Brown to the stand." Janelle takes the stand. Everyone watched as Janelle stood up. She didn't stride with Christine's fiery passion or Robyn's fragile sadness. Janelle's pace was deliberate, serene, near angelic in its stillness, but beneath the serenity lay a tempest. She was a woman who had borne her hurt quietly for decades, and now she was ready to voice it. She passed by Kody with no more than a flicker of her eyes. To her, he wasn't worth glancing at. The faint quiver of his body betrayed, however, that he sensed her like a blade to the stomach. The next witness was sworn in by the bailiff, and Janelle sat down, setting her hands carefully in her lap. But her face was a mask, almost icy, and her eyes were intense, concentrated, full of still rage. "Mrs. Brown," the prosecutor started, his voice respectful, "can you explain to the court why you've chosen to testify today?" Janelle's lips set themselves in something that was not quite a smile, more like a grim recognition of the truth. "I'm here because for years, I allowed Kody to make me believe that silence was strength, that being quiet was what held our family together." She leaned forward a little, her voice low and biting. "Silence didn't save us, it killed us. The night Garrison needed his father." The prosecutor nodded. "Let's talk about the night in question. What do you remember about Garrison's last few hours?" For the first time, Janelle's facade cracked. Her breathing caught, and she shut her eyes for an instant before she spoke. "That evening Garrison phoned me," she said quietly, "but I didn't pick up immediately. I was sleeping, and by the time I read his message it was too late." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't allow them to spill. "I called him back time and time again. No answer. So I did what any mom would do. I called Kody. I pleaded with him to go investigate our son." The courtroom was quiet, everyone sitting forward to hear her continue. Janelle's jaw clenched. But he didn't go. He didn't even sound worried. She slowly turned to regard Kody, her stare frosty. "Do you recall what you told me that night, Kody?" Kody shifted restlessly, his jaws opening and closing, but producing no sound. Janelle didn't give him time to respond. "You said, I'm not running after him. If he's going to make poor decisions, that's on him." Gasps were heard from the audience. Robyn covered her mouth with her hands, her sobs stifled. Janelle's voice escalated, shaking with rage. You pushed him away like he was nothing, like he was not your son.
Huh?
I told you he was in trouble. I told you he needed help, and you did nothing. Kody's outburst. Kody jumped to his feet, his face bright red, spittle flying as he bellowed. That's not how it happened. You're taking my words out of context, Janelle. You always do. Judge Hayes brought down his gavel. Bang, bang, bang. Mr. Brown, sit down at once, or you will be taken out of this courtroom. The room burst into mutters and gasps until the judge's loud voice fell silent. Kody slumped back into his chair, eyes blazing at Janelle, with a combination of loathing and desperation. Janelle didn't even blink. She just went on, her voice calm again. My son died that night, because his father didn't think he was worth saving. That's the truth. And no yelling will change it. The jury shifted uncomfortably in their seats, several of them looking visibly upset, even angry. The pattern of neglect. The prosecutor took a step closer. Mrs. Brown, was this the first time Kody failed to appear when his children needed him? Janelle laughed cynically. No, it was simply the worst time. She started going through case after case in which Kody had picked Robyn and her kids over the rest of the family. Missed birthdays, skipped graduations, ruined holidays because he wouldn't go if it wasn't all his way. Eventually, Janelle stated, it became evident. He didn't want to be a father to all of his children. He just wished to be a father to the ones who resided in Robyn's home. Her words were like lightning. Christine covered her mouth to suppress a sob. Meri bowed her head, shoulders shaking quietly. Even Robyn appeared shocked, though it wasn't certain if she was repulsed by the truth, or that it was being spoken aloud at last. The final blow from Janelle. Janelle's breath was deep, her last words slicing through the air like a knife. Kody Brown is not a victim. He's not a misguided dad. He's a man who left behind his children, and then lied to the world about it. Her voice cracked as she finished. If he had been half the father he led everyone to believe, my son would still be alive. When she stepped down from the stand, the room was utterly still, save for the sound of muffled sobs. Janelle didn't look at Kody once. She simply walked back to her seat, her head held high, while Kody sat frozen, his face ashen. Meri's testimony begins. The prosecutor wasted no time. Your Honor, the state calls Meri Brown to the stand. Meri stood slowly, her hands trembling slightly. Unlike Janelle and Christine, there was no spark in her steps, only a profound aching grief. She resembled a woman who had been shouldering pain for decades, her spirit thinned down but not shattered. As she walked by Kody, he extended his hand as if to hold her back, but she walked past him without so much as a glance, as if he were non-existent. Once sworn in, Meri remained silent, her eyes staring at the table in front of her. The prosecutor spoke softly, mindful of her delicate condition. Meri, you've had the longest relationship with Kody than anybody in this room. You've witnessed the family since its inception. Can you explain to the court what the early years were like? Meri's lips trembled as she spoke. In the beginning he was charming. He convinced us that this dream of becoming a united family was possible. We thought we were creating something lovely. She inhaled a trembly breath. But the dream became a nightmare. Living in fear. The prosecutor leaned forward. What do you mean by that? Meri's voice dropped to a whisper, making the whole room lean in closer. Kody had a temper, she told them. Not the kind where he'd yell and scream all the time. No, his temper was quieter than that. Scarier. She folded her hands tightly in her lap. When he was angry he wouldn't speak for hours, sometimes days. He'd just sit silently, staring, calculating, making sure everyone in the house knew he disapproved. A shiver ran through the courtroom. And then Meri went on. When he did finally talk, it was always about blaming someone else. He made us think it was all our fault, that we were the issue. Her voice broke, tears flowing down her face. I wasted years apologizing for things I didn't do, just in order to keep the peace. The fire that burned everything down. The prosecutor's tone became more cutting now. Meri, in your opinion, when did things truly fall apart? Meri closed her eyes, as if trying to block out the memory. When Christine left, something inside Kody snapped. He didn't try to fix the family. He didn't even seem sad. He just let it burn. Her eyes opened, full of raw pain. He wanted control more than he wanted love.
And when he could no longer dominate us, he chose to ruin everything instead. The courtroom responds. By the time Meri was finished, the whole courtroom was shaken visibly. Reporters wrote madly. Jurors shot uncomfortable looks at each other, and the gallery hummed with hushed tones of shock. Kody slumped in his seat, his erstwhile defiant posture lost. His eyes were wild, his face pale, as if he only now comprehended that all the secrets he'd secretly buried were now being uncovered. The judge pounded the gavel. Enough! Bang! Bang! This court will conduct itself with decorum. Silence came back, and the prosecutor addressed the judge. No further questions, Your Honor. Meri slowly descended, shoulders weighted but feet firm. As she stepped past Christine and Janelle, the three women shared a fleeting look, an unspoken recognition of mutual suffering and survival. The stage is set. Judge Hayes scanned the courtroom, his face serious. This court has heard some serious charges today, he asserted. We will take a short recess before continuing with the next witness. With the gavel's crash, the room descended into bedlam once more. But in the din, there was one thing that was certain. Christine had set the match. Janelle and Meri had set the gasoline ablaze. And now the truth of Kody Brown's manipulation reign was blazing for all to behold. The courtroom tension was palpable as recess ended. Whispers ran through the gallery like an unseen current. Reporters writing at lightning speed, their faces drawn and taut. Christine had set the blaze. Janelle had fueled the fire. Meri had exposed the family's worst secrets. Now it was Robyn's turn, the one whose voice could save Kody or reduce him to rubble. The mood changed as the bailiff called out her name. Robyn Brown, please approach the stand. Eyes all converged on her. Robyn's tense entrance. Robyn slowly got up, holding a crumpled tissue in one hand, her frame shaking. Her normally flawless appearance was absent. Her makeup was smeared from crying for hours, and her eyes were red and puffy. She didn't make her way to the stand. She stumbled. Each step seemed like it could be her final one. As she walked by Kody, he reached out for her hand, grasping, nearly begging. But Robyn flinched away, her breath catching in a strangled sob. The jurors gasped. For the first time, it felt like Robyn wasn't standing by Kody's side. She stood alone. After being sworn in, she sat down, shivering, and crouched over, her hands holding her tissue so tightly it ripped in half. The prosecutor edged his way forward, as if handling a delicate piece of glass that would shatter if touched. Mrs. Brown, he whispered gently, take a deep breath. We know it's hard, but we want to hear your truth. Robyn nodded, but her lips quivered so hard, no sound emerged. The quiet was oppressive. At last a sob escaped, raw and raspy. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. The prosecutor moved closer. You've carried a heavy load for a long time. This is your time to release it. The cracks began to show. Robyn glanced up, her eyes shining with tears. Kody always said he was doing it to protect us, she started, her voice cracking. He said that the decisions he made were in the best interests of the family. She glared at Kody, who sat stiffly, his jaw locked so tightly that it appeared painful. But that wasn't actually true, she went on, her voice shaking. He wasn't protecting us, he was protecting himself. Gasps filled the courtroom.
Kody's head snapped toward her, his face a mask of rage and disbelief. Robyn? Stop it, he barked. You don't understand what you're saying. Judge Hayes slammed his gavel. Bang! Bang! Mr. Brown? Sit down and remain silent. But Kody wouldn't stop. Robyn? Think about our family. Think about the kids. His voice cracked with desperation. You promised me you'd never turn on me like this. Robyn winced, tensing up on herself like a terrified child. The jury gazed, their faces changing, sympathy for Robyn, revulsion for Kody. Robyn's agonizing admission. The prosecutor rested a soothing hand on the stand. Mrs. Brown, tell the court what you're referring to when you state he was defending himself. Robyn wept openly now. Garrison did not die simply due to neglect, she breathed. There's more. The room held its collective breath. Christine leaned forward, clutching the armrest. Janelle's eyes welled with new tears, and Meri extended a hand, their shared sorrow uniting them in that instant. Robyn clutched her chest, like she was literally holding her heart intact. On that night, Garrison called me too, she confessed. He was frightened, shattered. He told me he needed assistance. Her voice broke as she went on. I told Kody. I begged him to go to Garrison. But he said to shut up. He said it was none of our business. The whole courtroom erupted in shocked gasps. Kody sprang to his feet, his face twisted with anger. Lies, he bellowed. She's lying to protect herself. Robyn, you know what happened. But Robyn didn't even glance at him. Her eyes were far away, fixed on some memory too excruciating to confront head-on. The hidden recording, the prosecutor's tone was firm but cutting. Mrs. Brown, just a little while ago you indicated Kody instructed you to be quiet. Why would he instruct you to be quiet about Garrison making a call for help? Robyn's whole body trembled as she spoke the words nobody anticipated. Because there was a recording. The gallery erupted into pandemonium. The judge's gavel slammed. Bang, bang, bang. Order, order in this courtroom. When finally there was silence, the prosecutor's eyes were wide. A recording? What sort of recording? Robyn's face contorted. Garrison recorded a conversation with Kody before he passed away. He wanted someone to know what was actually going on in our family. Christine let out a keen gasp, tears streaming down her face. Oh my God, she breathed. He tried to warn us. Robyn turns against Kody. Robyn's tears flowed more freely, her words pouring out of her as water from a shattered dam. I wanted to ruin the recording, but I couldn't. It was the last thing ever left behind by Garrison. She turned to Kody at last, her face ashen and bereft. You said to me if that recording ever surfaced, everything we built would collapse. And you were right. Her voice went up, ragged and wild. You made me lie to his mom. You made me pretend as if we didn't know how bad things had gotten. But I can't keep doing it, Kody. I won't keep doing it. The room stood in dumbfounded silence. Kody resembled a man cornered by his own guilt. His eyes flicked wildly about, perspiration beading on his forehead. He looked smaller somehow, as if the burden of the truth was actually weighing him down. Robyn, please, he pleaded, his voice cracking. If you say this, they'll kill me. They'll kill us. Robyn slumped her shoulders. There is no us's anymore. Her last words were spoken like a death sentence. You killed us the night you let Garrison die. The jury reacts. The jury sat stunned, faces ranging from horror to outright rage. Some of them brushed tears from their eyes. Others gazed at Kody as if he were a monster they'd never known before. Christine wrapped her arms around Janelle, both women crying openly now. Meri sat silent and shell-shocked, her face ashen, her lips quivering. Even the gallery, filled with reporters and onlookers, was completely motionless. The only noise was Robyn's soft, broken weeping. The judge's warning, Judge Hayes, his expression somber, addressed the prosecutor. Does this recording exist? The prosecutor nodded. Yes, Your Honor. We have it in our custody, and we stand ready to play it for the court. Kody's head jerked up, fear masking his face. No, you can't, he bellowed. Charging toward the prosecutor's table, two bailiffs hurried forward to hold him, thrashing and screaming. You don't understand. You'll destroy everything. Everything? Judge Hayes' voice boomed above the commotion. Mr. Brown, rein yourself in or you will be held in contempt. Finally, Kody dropped to the floor, sobbing and gasping, his body trembling with desperation. He glanced up at Robyn, betrayal etched into every angle of his face. You promised me, he breathed gruffly. You promised you'd never betray me. Robyn had no response. She couldn't. Her silence was louder than any shout. The cliffhanger. The judge gazed sternly at the jury. This court will adjourn until tomorrow morning, he declared. Then we will hear the recording in full. Bang. The gavel came down. The crowd burst into chaos. Reporters yelling questions. Flashbulbs popping like shots. As bailiffs led Kody away, his howls reverberated along the corridors. You'll regret this, Robyn. You'll all regret this. While that was happening, Robyn stayed on the stand, quietly crying as Christine, Janelle, and Meri stood as a group for the very first time, bound together by tragedy, anger, and an acute desire for justice. The destiny of the family, and the reality of Garrison's murder, now hung in the balance of a single final piece of evidence. The tape that could finally put Kody Brown out of business. The next day, the courtroom seemed a storm ready to burst. Witnesses filled every available bench, reporters jostled for room, and cameras strobed constantly in the hall outside. Within, the atmosphere was oppressive, heavy with anticipation and fear. Everyone was aware of what was about to happen. The tape, Garrison's last words, recorded just hours before he died. Christine sat with Janelle and Meri, her hands wrapped so tightly around theirs. Her knuckles ached. Robyn sat alone, white-faced and shaking, her eyes staring at the floor. At the defense table, Kody sat like a man waiting to be executed. His hair was mussed, his eyes red-rimmed, his hands trembling wildly as he muttered wildly to his lawyer. Occasionally his head would snap toward the door as if seeking a way out. There was not. The reality was present, and it was going to devour him. The judge calls the court to order. Judge Hayes came in, his face serious and somber. When his gavel came down, its sound boomed like thunder. Bang! This court is now in session, he stated. Today we will hear a vital bit of evidence, in the case of Garrison Brown's death. He faced the jury, his face somber. What you are about to hear is disturbing and deeply personal. I ask you to listen carefully and be impartial. The room was silent, absolutely silent. Even the reporters were holding their breath. The prosecutor stood up. Your Honor, the state offers into evidence a recording created by the late Garrison Brown, roughly 2 hours prior to his death. He held up a small audio device, tiny, almost ordinary looking, yet powerful enough to destroy everything. With a nod from the judge, he pressed play. The recording begins. At first, only static filled the room, then a shaky, tear-choked voice emerged. It was Garrison. This is Garrison. His voice quavered, brittle and weak. If you're hearing this, then something bad has happened to me. Christine clutched Janelle's hand and broke into silent sobs. The jurors leaned forward, trying to catch every syllable. Garrison went on, breathing in harsh, halting gasps. I don't know what to do anymore. Dad, he said, I wasn't part of the family anymore. He told me I was disposable. The courtroom erupted into gasps. Kody's face turned white, his jaws clenching shut. He shook his head hard, mouthing the word, "You know!" The recording continued. I attempted to speak with him. I pleaded with him to merely look at me, but he refused to listen. There was a silence. And then another voice joined the recording, a voice that made every hair in the room stand on end. It was Kody. The words of Kody himself revealed on tape. Kody's voice was icy, cutting, almost unidentifiable. You made your choice, Garrison, Kody declared. Do you think you can disrespect me, walk out on me, and still claim to be my son? You're nothing without me, nothing. The gallery gasped in shocked whispers. Christine held her chest, sobbing now loud enough to be heard. Robyn covered her face with her hands, crying hysterically. On the stand, a juror had her mouth agape in shock, while another was wiping tears from her eyes. The prosecutor let the tape keep playing, his face somber. Garrison's voice came back, pleading and broken. Dad, please, I just need you to be my father again. I'm trying to hold on. There was a horrid, eerie silence on the tape. And then Kody's last, heartbreaking words. If you can't handle life without me, then maybe you shouldn't be here at all. The aftermath of the tape. The courtroom erupted into bedlam. Christine screamed, collapsing in Janelle's arms. Meri wept openly, rocking back and forth, like a child. Robyn collapsed to her knees on the stand, weeping so intensely she could hardly catch her breath. Reporters yelled wildly, cameras firing like lightning. The air was filled with people gasping, screaming and weeping. Judge Hayes slammed his gavel. Bang, 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 order. This court will come to order at once. Gradually the shouting died down, but the air remained charged with anger and sorrow. Kody crouched motionless, his eyes bulging in shock and terror. His body shook uncontrollably, his breathing in broken gasps. For the first time, the world witnessed him not as a patriarch, but as a man completely vulnerable and vanquished. The prosecutor's voice sliced through the quiet like a knife. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he told them, you have just heard, in his own words, Kody Brown deserting and condemning his own son. This wasn't a mistake a father makes. This was a betrayal by a father. Kody's last desperate attempt. Kody sprang out of his chair suddenly, his voice raw and pleading. No, that's not what I was saying, he bellowed. You don't get it. I was trying to make him toughen up. I never wanted him to. His words broke on incoherent sobs. He whirled to Christine, his face contorted with rage and sorrow. Christine? Tell them I loved him. Slowly Christine got up, her face smeared with tears. When she spoke, her voice was colder than ice. You loved him when it suited you. The rest of the time, you loved yourself better. Her words struck Kody as if a physical punch had landed on him. He staggered back, falling into his chair, as if the heaviness of his own guilt had finally overcome him. The verdict, the judge turned to the jury, his tone firm. You have heard all the evidence. You will now retire to deliberate on the charges before you. The jurors departed, and for what seemed like an eternity, there was silence. No one stirred, even the air felt stalled. At last, the door swung open, and the foreperson emerged, holding a piece of paper. Judge Hayes accepted it, read it, and addressed the courtroom. In the charge of criminal negligence, resulting in the death of Garrison Brown, he declared, "We find the defendant guilty." The room exploded again, this time with a combination of cheers, tears, and agonized screams. Christine clung to Janelle and Meri, as Robyn collapsed, sobbing harder than ever. Kody, meanwhile, sat perfectly still, his face blank. Then slowly, he turned his head toward Christine, and whispered, "You think you've won, but this isn't over." The final twist, as bailiffs moved to take Kody away, the prosecutor held up his hand. "Your Honor, there is one final matter," he said. "While listening to evidence, we found something surprising on the recording." He clicked play again. At first, it was the same static, but then, a different voice was heard, weak but clear. It wasn't Garrison, it wasn't Kody, it was Robyn. "Kody," her recorded voice spoke, panicked and urgent. "Please don't tell him that. If you continue to push him this way, something awful will happen." The whole room came to a standstill. Every gaze turned Robyn's way. Her actual self gasped, her face blanching as the blood left it. The tape went on, catching Kody's icy response. "Then let it happen. The sooner he's gone, the sooner we can all move on." The courtroom erupts. There was chaos again, louder and more wild than the first time. Reporters yelled into microphones. Jurors averted their faces, and Christine screamed, "You monster!" Robyn doubled over, crying hysterically. "I tried to stop him. I swear I tried," she wailed. Kody flailed angrily as bailiffs pulled him towards the door. "You'll regret this," he bellowed, his voice ringing through the hall. "You'll all regret this day." But nobody believed him any longer. The truth had been told. The lie was gone. The final image as Kody was led out. Christine, Janelle, and Meri stood united, arms around each other. Tears rolled down their faces, but their stance was firm, unshattered. Robyn sat alone, crying, surrounded by pieces of her shattered loyalty. The lens of a nearby journalist zoomed in on the face of Christine as she mouthed the last words of the trial. "He didn't just shatter this family, he destroyed it." The screen went black. A single sentence of text came on. "The truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes it burns everything down."